Overshadowed by Kosovo's threatened independence, Serbia's people go to the polls. Could their new choice of president mean the difference between war and peace and determine their course of their history forever? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Imran Garda. Serbians are electing a new president in polls which could shape the whole future course of the troubled nation. They're voting in a closely fought race between pro-Western and fiercely nationalist candidates. The result could determine whether Serbia moves closer to Europe or swings further towards Moscow and isolation from the West. But that won't be known yet. Voting's likely to prove indecisive and go to another round in February. Well, the election comes, of course, against threats of a breakaway by the Serbian province of Kosovo. Kosovan leaders, with the backing of the United States and many EU countries, say they could declare independence as early as next month. The two main candidates out of the 9 contenders are both strongly opposed to independence, though they say they'll stop short of any conflict. While sitting President Boris Tadic is seeking a second 5-year term. The Democratic Party candidate wants to speed up Serbian integration into the European Union. His rival, Tomislav Nikolic, with a slight edge according to early opinion polls, is a fierce Eurosceptic and nationalist. His camp have promised sanctions against Kosovo, including cutting power supplies if it attempts to go it alone. Well, joining us now are our guests in Belgrade, Ljiljana Smailovic, editor of Serbian daily newspaper Politika. In Moscow, Alexander Pikayev from the Institute of World Economy and International Relations. And in London, author Tim Judah, an expert on the Balkans. Welcome to the program. Ms. Smailovic, 9 candidates. Are you convinced that it's a straight battle between Tadic and Nikolic?
Yes, very much so. We had the same battle almost 4 years ago. There were a lot of candidates and these 2 men faced off in a runoff election, and I think we're going to see a replay of that. On the 3rd of February, there's going to be a runoff between Tadic and Nikolic.
How important and symbolic is the role of presidents in Serbia?
It's largely ceremonial. But Mr. Nikolic, the Radical Party candidate, if he did get elected, he could cause a lot of damage, rhetorically, symbolically, and even actual damage to the country's relations with the West. He could do damage to the pretty complicated multi-ethnic tissue of this country. So, yes, it's a ceremonial post, but it's pretty important.
Mr. Judah, in London, is Boris Tadic the West's most palatable choice for president?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, between Mr. Tadic and Mr. Nikolic, I don't think that there's any room for doubt who people in the West and especially in the European Union would like to see win the election. If Mr. Tadic wins the election, then there's a better chance of Serbia continuing on its path towards European integration. And if Mr. Nikolic wins the election, there's a good chance that Serbia will stall, perhaps begin to move back into isolation and certainly not be continuing to move forwards towards European integration.
Alexander Pikayev, do you think that Serbs have been left with a fundamental choice during this election? It's almost like a referendum. Either you have the European Union or you have Kosovo. Take it or leave it.
No, definitely not. I think that the question with Kosovo has been solved. Kosovo would be independent irrespectively who would win Serbian elections, and I believe that Serbian voters know that very well. And regarding European integration, it's not that easy because the European Union only hints that it is ready to accept Serbia into its membership, but at the same time they pose so many conditions for that, and it would be very difficult for the Serbs to fulfill these conditions under Nikolic or under Tadic, so that it's not a choice between the European integration and Kosovo independence. I believe Serbs have left with very little choice, frankly speaking, and their real choice is whether they would quietly accommodate to what West wants from them, or they would be they would continue to be troublemakers in that important geostrategic area of Western Balkans.
Mr. Pikayev, UK and US observers have been barred from observing this particular election. How significant is that?
Well, the US and UK observers have been widely discredited in non-NATO part of the world. Here in Russia there is a very deep mistrust to their judgment. Their mission in Georgia recently was also linked to some scandals, and it's quite understandable that Serbia banned their participation. Especially you need to take into account the fact that as recently as 1999, Serbia was bombed by NATO aviation, and the US and UK played a leading role in those bombings. So that in the eyes of many Serbs, as far as I understand, the US and UK are not considered as friendly nations.
Ms. Smailovic, do you agree that there's a distrust of the UK and US observers, particularly, and in the broader picture, particularly since the NATO bombings are so fresh in the memory of Serbs?
Well, it's a little bit more complicated than that. First, let's not forget that the government of Serbia, which also consists of nationalist parties, had approved British and American observation of the elections. Look, there's no problem about the Serbian election. It's going to be free and fair. The OSCE is also going to observe it. This was a small sign of discontent that was registered among people who are members of the Electoral Commission. And I think this is what this election is going to establish. We are going to find out exactly how unhappy are people with the West's meddling in the Kosovo situation. We're going to register the anti-Western sentiment, the anti-Western backlash, and this is what Mr. Nikolic is counting on. And this is why we have to see whether Mr. Nikolic gets more votes than he did 4 years ago. If he does, then that should be attributed to the Serbs' unhappiness about the West's support for an independent Kosovo.
And something I'm trying to understand, Ms. Smailovic, how important is Prime Minister Kostunic's role at present? He supports Velimir Ilic's bid for president. Why is that?
Well, in my opinion, he's supporting someone who is articulating in the election campaign precisely his point of view, which is a calibrated one. He is pro-Western, pro-European integration. He's in favor of that. At the same time, he is much of a third-way person. He's also looking to Moscow for support on Kosovo. And he wants this understood. He wants to, in a way, you know, we have been conditioned by the European Union for so long. Now Mr. Kostunica is trying to set some conditions for the EU. He's saying if you are sending an EU mission to Kosovo without Serbia's approval, without the Security Council approval, without Russia's approval, we will not be ready to sign the Association and Stabilization Agreement. So Mr. Kostunica is backing the one presidential candidate who is articulating precisely this point of view, this slight, so this is not a pro-Europe or against Europe position. This is something in between, yes, Europe, but under certain conditions.
Can we say, Mr. Juda, can we say for certain that the Serbian people want to join the European Union?
Well, I think that most people in Serbia and the Western Balkans really want three things from Europe. They want to be able to travel freely without visas, as they used to do before the collapse of Yugoslavia. They want to be able to do business in Europe freely, just like anybody else within the European Union. And they want to be able to go and work freely in countries like Germany and Austria that they used to be able to go and work in. So I think if you ask people, you know, what do you want? That's what they want, and that's what's on offer from the European Union eventually.
Alexander Pikayev, how lucrative economically would it be for Russia if Mr. Nikolic wins the election?
Well, actually, let me say that the Russians do not oppose Serbian European integration, and here people disappointed on how Serbia was treated by the European Union and NATO, but the very move of the Serbian people towards Europe is absolutely understandable, and given their geography is absolutely unavoidable. So Russia won't be the country which would block or would try to block that move, even if it could do so. Regarding the economy, Serbia is not that important for Russia. Russia has a huge foreign trade, $500 billion last year, even more. And trade with Serbia is small enough. It probably less than 1% of this overall trade balance. But the Russians now are interested in some potentially lucrative for Serbia economic cooperation, especially in energy area. Russia offers to buy the Serbian refinery, network of gas supply. Also, the Russians are ready to build a gas pipeline through Serbia. They are ready to invest into construction of a natural gas storage facility. And it means several billions of dollars of investment into Serbian economy. It means several dozens of thousands labor workplaces, and it means millions or even hundreds of millions money for the Serbia, so that Russia potentially is ready to invest in Serbia. Serbs are split here because Brussels tells them that they should not agree on this Russian proposal, so that Brussels, it's not ready to invest into Serbian economy, but it says to the Serbs, don't accept Russian investment, in fact. And therefore this deal is under question. And after presidential elections, we hope that the situation would be different. Mr. Nikolic would more likely to accept Russian offer. Mr. Tadic maybe would be less likely to do so, but we'll wait and see. I think this potential energy cooperation between Russia and Serbia might happen if certainly Serbia is interested in that. Russia has many other options in the region. All countries would be interested to become a hub of Russian natural gas supply there.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, stay with us. Don't go away. Time for a quick break. When we come back, we look at how Serbia shapes up in the eyes of the rest of the world a little bit further. Do stay with us.